and right into the stretch. Looking back and throws up the middle. Rose is on his way around. Picked up by Otis.
Here comes the ready or not. Here comes the boys from the south. Here comes the ready or not. How you like me now? I say, here comes the boom, ready or not. Here comes the boys from the south. Boom, here comes the boom, ready or not. How you like me now?
You don't live in Cleveland, you live in Cincinnati.
You are watching live to the Best Damn Cincinnati Sports Podcast. I guess this side of Columbus. Congratulations to Ohio State, national champions. My name is Santori Miles. We got Bengal Dad. We got Big Savage Greg. How we doing? How we doing?
Hey, we're doing it. It's almost like you would think it's snowing in Florida right now. Oh, it actually is.
Yeah, it's a little cold outside. A little cold.
I feel like I'm a special guest.
Well,
What's the flashing going on now?
I don't know.
That's kind of cool, though. I like that.
That's because the TV's on. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
They're all right. It doesn't bother me at all. So we got about 2 or 3 things to touch on tonight. But first and foremost, we need to go and thank the people that help us run the show. And it looks like StreamYard has updated a lot of things here. So I'm trying to find where my video clips are. There it is. First and foremost, imagine, if you will, you're from South Bend, Indiana. You got all fired up for last night just to watch your boys get absolutely shellacked by Ohio State. It sucks. You're sad. You're sorrowed. And you need to drown it with something. Brimminghorn Meadery. Use our code HOODAY9 to get 15% off 2 bottles or more. Basically helps cover the cost of shipping, even to states like Montana. Greg, do you want to talk about your favorite?
Oh, man. Okay. I'm going to go off script once again here, but I'll do my best. Are you looking for great food? Great everything? Well, head over to Midwest Best Barbecue. I can't do it. Head over to Midwest Best Barbecue. Awesome wings. Awesome everything. They just had a shrimp and grits and ribs this past weekend. Every third weekend of the month, they have ribs. But, yeah, man, check it out. It's awesome. Right off Ward's Corner.
And, Dad, do you have any kind of semblance of what you used to say for script?
Not really. I just know that Script coffee is supposed to be fantastic. I don't drink coffee. It says a lot on the bag. I wish they made hot chocolate. Can we get Script?
No. Hey. They just did come out with like a white hot chocolate flavor. They just came out with some new flavors, and they do have hot chocolate there. They've always had hot chocolate.
I don't think we're promoting the hot chocolate, but Script. Hey, I know they're getting bigger and bigger, and they now are the official coffee of the Breakfast Club.
Yes, they are.
Script Coffee. They have hot chocolate now. Just how we're going to end it.
There we go. They have hot chocolate.
All right, so we got some people in the chat. $1 Million Bengal, Tyler Bowles, Matt Walker. No Stranger. No Crypt.
Whoa.
Is Stranger okay? Where is he at? What's going on? Do we need to send out a squad to go find him?
I forgot again. Is Stranger the guy that calls me kicker bully?
That's Crypt.
That's Crypt. Okay.
He's not here either. You've earned that nickname, so I mean, you're kind of just known as that at this point.
I think I'm winning on that when it comes to
Yeah. With all that being said, the Bengals by January 21st, and I'm going to go ahead and announce just the Al Golden thing because we know it's basically inevitable. Paul Denner Jr. said we're just waiting to sign it. They have to wait till tomorrow to officially interview him. It's done. It is what it is. We understand.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is this one of those signings? I asked a question a few weeks ago on Twitter. Mm-hmm. When they announce who their defensive coordinator is, are you going to be giddy as a schoolgirl, or are you going to be saying, man, I wish baseball season was here? I don't know how good this guy is.
It's probably somewhere in between but leaning toward Giddey. He's definitely not a bad hire. I think we'll just start with the Al Golden topic. I think the thing that's slowing most people down is the fact that he was here before. And you and I have talked about this, Dad, hundreds of times over the years of I don't want it to be somebody that, quite frankly, is just here and they've been here before. I don't want a retread. I just don't want to hire somebody that we're familiar with. However, here's the deal. And I put this poll question out on Twitter just to kind of a little bit of a gotcha moment, if you will, because there were a lot of people that were kind of complaining about it just because of the fact that Ohio State ran through them like tissue paper. And I said, would you rather have Al Golden or a top 10 graded defense with a guy who's coached in a Super Bowl? About 70% of the people said top 10 defense with a Super Bowl coach. Well, that's Al Golden. Notre Dame's defense graded top 10 last year in all of college football through Pro Football Focus. And he was huge part in the Bengals going to the Super Bowl. He was the guy that called all those defenses on third down, that got all those turnovers, all those timely plays, and always got them off the field. He was the guy that developed Jermaine Pratt into what he is. Because if you remember, before Al Golden, Pratt was kind of after Al Golden, Pratt's been He was responsible for developing Logan Wilson. He has his DNA on a lot of what the Bengals did right. And I don't think it should be any coincidence that when him and Livingston left, a lot of it went down. I do think the Bengals like what they have in terms of a scheme and a system on defense. And like Dad, you and I said, it's not that Lou was bad. I think the voice was getting old. So if you want to continue with a different voice in the same scheme, you get someone who runs a very similar, if not the same system, which is what they ran at Notre Dame, with a little bit different mentality. I think it very much fits exactly what they want to do. I know it seems like it was a short, limited search, and I understand why that would frustrate people.
Yeah.
But I do think that in the grand scheme of things, Al Golden would have been a very, very coveted defensive coordinator among the National Football League. So I do think they got a good one.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about what you said. Yeah, I wish the net was wider, but you know what? Some people pointed out maybe they were interviewing people. We just didn't know. Maybe there could have been a phone interview with somebody. You don't know. And obviously now with Patrick Graham, he's a finalist now for the Jaguars head coaching job. A lot of people wanted Graham, like you said, Santor, because he had no connections with the Bengals or anything. And I would have been happy with Graham too. I mean, either Graham or Golden I would have been completely fine with. But Golden, like I said, I thought he had a better. Remember when Lou came here? We didn't know who the hell Lou was. He really didn't have much of a resume. You look at Al Golden after he left here, he built up his resume even better with the top 10 defense. I mean, Notre Dame's defense was pretty much not the greatest. Notre Dame was nowhere near before he got there, right?
Right. He's sorry, I'm trying to plug my laptop in here, and I'm not doing a great job of it. His resume is good. I know everybody's going to call it a lazy hire, and I understand that. Mm-hmm. But the guy is qualified. It's not like they promoted Charles Burks or they went with Marion Hobby or just promoted someone that was already here. I know it's similar to that because he was here. But when he left, they fell off a little bit, and he went and had a great career at Notre Dame when he left. So he's, it's not like he's some schlep. He is a proven NFL coach.
Well, just out of curiosity, and I know we've kind of talked about this stuff offline, how would you have felt about if you had the choice of Al Golden, Mike Zimmer, or Marvin Lewis?
It would have been Al Golden of the three.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe Mike Zimmer is retiring. Well, no, I know he has a house in Kentucky, but I believe he's retiring. Now, I would have been open to have Mike Zimmer back, like in a Duffner type of role as an assistant.
I would have him back as a consultant.
Yes.
I just think his time's run out as a coach.
Yeah.
And if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have loved to have Marvin as a DC. Mm-hmm. But, he's also coached elsewhere. He's been in consultant and senior advisor roles, and they haven't really been working. So
I'm just curious.
yeah, he of all the names that were pitched out and available, I think everybody, if they had their choice, would have picked Robert Saleh.
Yeah.
And I understand that, but Robert Saleh is now on his second interview with the same team for a head coaching position. Robert Saleh is not going to be a defensive coordinator if it's up to him. So we need to take that off. I know a lot of people were looking at Matt Eberflus. I haven't really seen his name floated around too much outside of that initial wave. The third guy on that list that I was excited about was Al Golden, and I thought that was the most realistic option. My next pick would have been Patrick Graham because there was track record of success with multiple different teams. And then the only other name we ever saw with connection was Covington, who was the Patriots D-line coach, which I talked to Dale about this the other night. It wouldn't surprise me if he ends up coming in and being our defensive line coach, period.
Yeah.
Because things aren't working out in New England. They're gutting that staff.
Do you think he's still looking for a DC job, or besides the Bengals, we haven't heard of him interview with anybody else?
I don't know, quite honestly. To be honest, I don't know.
Well,
in terms of the realistic options, I do think Al Golden is probably the best of the realistic options, and that's not me trying to be, Bengali. I mean, Dad, you know me. If I think they hire somebody that's a schlep, I'll tell you. Because I wasn't particularly fond of the Zach Taylor hire. I didn't like the Lou Anarumo hire. I thought the Brian Callahan hire was nepotism more than anything. All three have worked out, to varying degrees. All three worked out. So if this is the route they want to go, I trust it. He's got the right resume for it, and he's got a track record of success. And he's got a track record of success with this team developing talent and at the NFL level, and he knows how we operate. So it just seems like – does it seem like they didn't cast a wide net? Sure. But we really don't know who all they've talked to. But in terms of realistic options, this still would have been my number one.
I agree with that.
Well, let's hope he's got a really good scheme, and let's hope that everybody buys into it. Because you can have a good scheme, and if they don't buy into it, that's a problem. Well, if people buy into something and it's a bad scheme, that's a problem.
It's a similar scheme to Lou Anarumo, and it's a different mentality and coaching style than Lou.
How is it different?
Lou tended to be a little all over the place because if you remember when he first started, there were complaints that he was just over-aggressive and very brash and into people's faces, and he struggled, and he had to learn how to really deal with players, and there was just some inconsistencies with getting the message across to the players. And he had a couple guys that really liked him, like Mike Hilton, that really made that thing go. Jesse Bates really made the thing go. From what I understand, Golden's style is a little bit more developmental as opposed to relying on veterans to come in and do the job. He tends to give more people chances. It's the same scheme, a little bit more aggressive at times. It's a different way of communicating. I don't think it's as complex. But I do know that he's much more into development of talent on that end, specifically with linebackers and defensive line.
Yeah, and what do you say to people, Santori, said, oh, man, that game yesterday, I don't want Al Golden. I mean, Ohio State, their two receivers, man, I think at the very least, those two receivers they have, at the very least, are going to be top-notch starters. Those two receivers, are top 10 receivers in the NFL in the future, or three of them.
I had this conversation with my boss at work today, actually. And I said, what people need to understand is if you really, really want to break down those two organizations, Notre Dame, I truly believe, if I had to give an edge to coaching, would go to Notre Dame. I think that highly of Marcus Freeman and Al Golden.
Yeah.
If I had to go on straight talent, Ohio State clears them, and it's not even close.
Yeah.
There's just such a gap in Ohio State's roster versus what Notre Dame had. And people forget Notre Dame was missing like 5 or 6 starters from the beginning of the year. They got guys that were backup starting, and Ohio State, I'm sure they had some injuries. I don't know their roster like I did Notre Dame's. They're probably a little deeper pockets, a lot more of a relevant culture recently. You know, I give Notre Dame the edge in X's and O's, but you also need Jimmys and Joes. And I think Ohio State is just far superior in that aspect. And it doesn't matter how good your coaching is if you just don't have the horses to hang with them. And I think that's what you saw.
Well, it's definitely going to be a wait and see game for me.
Sure. As it should be for everybody.
No, it should be. No, I agree with you, Bengal Dad, as it should be. Yeah.
So what's next? At what point does the focus go directly to T and Jamar? Because now we haven't got him yet. Let's assume we get our defensive coordinator by Thursday.
It'll be tomorrow or Thursday.
It'll be tomorrow. Yeah.
So at what point do we start focusing on the main players on the field?
Well, they're still got to get D-line and linebackers coach squared away, which probably won't be too shortly after.
Even though they need that, I'm sorry, I'm just exhausted. Even though they need that, I don't know how that gets in the way of T and Jamar.
It just depends who's handling that situation. If it's just, if it's Katie doing contracts and it's Duke and Zach in terms of the actual coaches, then it shouldn't interfere at all. My assumption would be it'll be shortly after the Super Bowl. They're going to take their time, fill the staff out. Mm-hmm. A lot of times what you see, and this aggravates people every single year when it happens, Dad, you and I have fallen into this too. You'll know that you've got a big one coming up. It was like when we were waiting on Joe Burrow. Every single time there's a notification, you're like, is that it? Is that the one? What's going to end up happening is they're going to extend somebody that you really don't give a shit about, quite frankly, and it'll be like a 1 year, like Drew Sample. He'll get it like it won't be him because he's already extended, but it'll be somebody like a Team Davis Gaither or a Cam Sample. Will get a 1 year prove it contract, and everybody will lose their mind and they'll go, why are we signing this guy first? They all got to get signed. Sometimes you get the easy ones out of the way. My guess is the focus will, if it already hasn't, will shift toward Jamar and T sometime around whatever that is, like February 8th. Once everything gets squared away, the season's over, and all the new money starts clicking over.
What's the deadline for the franchise tag?
Well, I don't know the exact date, but I know that free agency typically starts sometime.
It's like 2 weeks before free agency, or
yeah, it's probably around like March 12th, March 11th, or something like that. It's typically about 3 or 4 days before free agency. Mm-hmm. So you really realistically have about a 45-day window if they're going to work an extension with T. Higgins. I don't see it happening that early. I think that they're going to worry about Jamar Chase and their internal guys and whatever external stuff's coming in. They already know what they're probably going to have to pay Jamar. There's going to be a little bit of a starting over situation just because, they are going to wait for the new cap to get announced. They are going to wait for, what league money's coming in. They're going to have to cut a couple guys, make some decisions moving forward. And quite frankly, Jamar is under contract through this season. So as much as you want to get it done immediately because it sets a good precedent moving forward and it's good for locker room health and it shows Jamar your commitment to him, if it doesn't happen right away, it's really not a big deal. But they are going to want to get established because a lot of what they're going to be able to do and not do in free agency is going to depend on how much cash that eats up. And then my guess is they're going to tag T initially, get Jamar done as quick as they can before free agency, go through free agency, go through the draft. Then once everybody's signed around May from the draft, you'll start hearing an uptick in T. Higgins' contract once everything's squared away, because then he's got a deadline to sign that franchise tag, and they'll just probably take that up to the wire of negotiating with that deadline. That's my assumption.
I certainly wish they would move fast. I think the optics, they always lose the game of optics.
100%.
They need to win that, just like Minnesota already signed their coach today.
Mhm.
There was conversation about that. He loses a game, and within a couple days, boom, they get it done. They get the big question mark revolving around their team done. And that's really, really good for the locker room when they do that.
And that's kind of what I was saying with Jamar.
I don't know why they haven't extended Jamar already.
Well,
I don't know
take-
what they're waiting for.
Well,
Well,
coach, yeah. Go ahead, Sador.
I was going to say Jamar and the team kind of put a on it until the season ended, which is fine. But the season ended 16 days ago.
Yeah, season's over. They should have signed him the day after the season ended.
It's been 2 weeks. Clock's already started.
I mean,
I
there's
don't
going to
know
be
what they're
conversation. There's going to be national. You know, the pundits are going to start putting their narrative out there, and it's just all that stuff again that the Bengals have the ability to squash, and they just it's almost like they revel in it. I don't understand. Like they revel in controversy. That's terrible. That's drama.
They've got an opportunity because, and we'll get into Scott Peters here in a second, but they shored that one up pretty quick. I'll give them that. It looks like they're going to get Al Golden squared away pretty quick. You know, as soon as the game ended, because there is a limitation on what they can and can't do with college coaches currently going. That's going to be pretty quick if that was their guy. But it's January 21st. We kind of knew yesterday it was going to be Al Golden, if not a couple days before. So within 2 weeks of the season ending, they fixed their coaching staff, or at least filled the holes. That's a pretty quick turnaround to fill your coaching staff out in 2 weeks, especially when it's a D coordinator and an O-line coach. Those are important. Now, it's been 2 weeks since the clock has started for Jamar Chase. They have an opportunity to have squared away offensive line, defensive coordinator, and Jamar Chase before the Super Bowl. And that would squash a lot of the lazy, slow, and cheap narrative really, really quick. And, on the heels of everything that's going on with the stadium news now, you got to start working on building up some good faith again. You've had back-to-back seasons where you missed the playoffs, and now you've got guys unsigned, and now you've got the county trying to drag your name through the mud with the stadium deal. So they could do a lot of goodwill, like you said, for the optics of the NFL and the fan base. I don't really think they care about the optics, though, is the problem.
The problem is they're probably going to do everything we want them to do, but they're going to lose so much, I guess, equity with the fans and with the national media because of how they do it.
It'll take too long, or there'll be the news story of, well, they lowballed Jamar. They didn't want to give him his guaranteed money again. And it'll be like, Jesus Christ, guys. They do enough to make themselves look bad, as opposed to just, like you said, the Vikings did, get it done right, quick, and now.
Yeah, and I'd like to know what's really going on with the stadium. I read the Bengals' point. I read the county's point. It's just two kids that are bickering, and I don't know who broke the lease or was in whatever they call that, where you're not following through what you're supposed to do on the lease. Both sides are saying that the other side did that. I don't know if the Bengals are wanting $300 million from the county for upgrades or $300 million more than the Bengals are willing to pony up. So I think the Bengals are willing to give $120 million. So are they wanting $300 million or $420 million worth of upgrades? And what are these upgrades going to do to help the team? I mean, I don't think it's an old, antiquated stadium. It's a different style of stadium. It wasn't like the stadium that we saw Ohio State playing in yesterday. It's nothing like that, but I don't know how it's any worse than Pittsburgh, Cleveland, or Baltimore. They're all very similar stadiums.
Mm-hmm.
Carolina, very similar.
Well, Santori, I've had how many conversations in the last couple of days have I had with you about this?
rant B-dubs with Greg the other night.
I was so Bengal Dad. I was a clickbait victim to WCPO. Are the Bengals moving? I'm like, oh my gosh! And
No,
so Sadar, I'll let you take it from here, bud.
they're not moving. You got a lot of fans out there that are trying to perpetuate this idea that they are moving. Here's the deal, and this is the reality of it. It would be an absolute financial and economic disaster for Hamilton County to lose the Bengals. Okay, Northern Kentucky would be pissed. Downtown Cincinnati would be pissed. OTR would be pissed. The banks would be pissed. I'm sure that there's some market share with the Reds that would upset them. Hamilton County is going to do everything they can to get as much money out of the Bengals, but at the end of the day, they're not going to let them leave.
Well, unfortunately, they're playing in the Mike Brown Super Bowl arena.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Brown lives for this stuff. He doesn't live for the Bengals to be successful.
Well, and here's the other thing on the side with Mike Brown. They've been in Hamilton County forever. Okay, he's like 90 years old. He's not going to want to up and move the team this late in his life. He's just not. Okay, they just spent, I don't know how many dozens and maybe $100 million on securing properties over the last 20 years down the Ohio River, line between the Hilltop properties and where they're building a practice facility that's not done yet. It's going to take them another probably year to complete all that stuff. There's currently a bubble.
Keep in mind, all the money they spend for that it's not an investment that's losing money. That just gets pulled. If they ever do decide to sell the team or do whatever, that's all additional assets. So it's not like they threw that money.
It is if they sell
down the river.
It is if they sell it, but if they're just planning on moving, that's a lot of property acquisition.
I agree with that. For a move, that would be a loss.
No, so that they're not going to move, right? So now
I really don't think they're going to sell the team because he's too loyal to his kids.
No, explain the Modell rule too, if you can, that got passed.
Oh, the Modell rule that went into an effect. This is in the state of Ohio. This prevents basically what Art Modell did. You have to find, basically, if you want to leave, right? If the Bengals would want to leave, the county has to be either at severe fault, which they're really not in this scenario, or you have to give the county an opportunity to find a new venue for you to play. You can't just elect to build a new stadium somewhere else. Okay? And if the Bengals were to decide to do that without giving the county that opportunity, which would take more than the 18 months left in this lease, then the county would then be able to seize the team and take it over. Mike Brown's not going to let that happen. He's a lawyer. He's not dumb. Okay? So they're really not going to be going anywhere. If the county and the Bengals absolutely under no circumstance can come to an agreement and the lease is up and they do need to move, one, it wouldn't be a sale, it would be a move. And it would be an enormous financial hit for the Bengals to move, knowing that they just built all of that shit downtown and acquired all of that land and all of that property. The NFL would have to grant them the right to move. And quite frankly, that only happens when you have bad ticket sales, and they don't have bad ticket sales. Okay? The NFL hates empty stadiums. The NFL hates empty properties. Hamilton County would lose all of the revenue from the Bengals. They would be sitting there with an empty stadium that, quite frankly, they say they don't want because there's not a dome on it. They're only going to be able to use it for 6 or 7 months out of the year for concerts, which they won't sell that place out for concerts. They just won't. And if the Bengals do move, let's go to the hypothetical that it gets all the way down to step 10 and they have to move.
San Antonio.
Right? No. The NFL would have to grant them a severe relocation. Otherwise, it would most likely be over the border to Kentucky, which doesn't fucking bother me at all. That's still the Cincinnati Bengals if they're in Covington. Somewhere up in Butler County or Mason, which that's what they were going to do last time. That was in the plans. Claremont County, Warren County, near Kings Island. The idea that it gets to the point that they would have to leave the greater Cincinnati area would be so far down the line and would take so much of a disaster and Roger Goodell approving it. And here's the other thing. If they approve it and get to that point, I guarantee you Mike Brown's 90-year-old ass isn't going to agree to pay for his own stadium in San Antonio. So you have to find a city willing to pay for Mike Brown to move his entire system there. And he's going to want money to pay for all the property that he just paid for. There are so many financial gymnastics for that to happen between Hamilton County and the Cincinnati Bengals. It's borderline asinine to think that they would just leave Cincinnati. They're almost gridlocked on both sides. All that's going to happen is they're going to bitch and moan, bitch and moan, bitch and moan, bitch and moan. It's going to get all the way up to the end. And by the way, it takes like 2 years to build a stadium. So even if they do agree to go to San Antonio, and San Antonio does agree to build them a new stadium, that means the Cincinnati Bengals would be playing at some college field for probably 2 years, and the NFL would absolutely hate that. The NFL would want them to have a stadium built, everything done, ready to rock and roll ahead of time, and the lease ends in 18 months. They're out of time to do all that. Which means
something else I think is odd is when this came out a few months ago, and I know the county wanted to build a new stadium and have a dome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And why is Mike Brown so anti-new stadium and anti-new dome or have a dome? Why does he just want to renovate the current stadium?
I think the Bengals would agree to – it's not that the county doesn't just necessarily want a new stadium with a dome. The county wants to put a stadium or a dome on top of that stadium as one of the options. But the county wants to do all this and have Mike Brown pay for everything. They're trying to do to Mike Brown what Mike Brown did to them last time.
Well, they don't have any leverage.
Exactly. And that's what Mike Brown and Troy Blackburn are saying. They're just going, no. Like, you guys still owe us these other renovations. Because if you remember, the Bengals let them off the hook for like $30 million a couple of years ago that was owed to them as good faith to stay here. So the county and whoever this Alicia girl is, I don't really know her
Alicia
name.
Reese.
Or Lisa Reese. They're wanting to put all this extra money into renovations. The Bengals have a number. The county has a number. The county's number is way higher than the Bengals. And now the county's saying, well, we need to just put a dome over this thing so we can use it long term. And Mike Brown's like, why would I put a dome over the stadium? So they're just going back and forth over what the renovation should cost. Why aren't we? They're so far apart in numbers. It's just like what you and I do every single day with a car sale, except the issue is there's no other competition. There's no other car for these people to go buy, and I'm the only dealership. So at some point, if they want the Bengals to stay or they want their car, they're going to have to cave. Because there will be a city somewhere willing to help Mike Brown out. But the NFL isn't going to want to do that. And it's going to cost the Bengals a metric fuck ton of money to do that move. Mike Brown doesn't want to pay for a damn thing. We know that.
Yeah.
So this entire conversation, long story short, is a disaster for both sides to not come to some sort of an agreement. One way or the other.
Well, they'll stretch it out to the end because Mike Brown's involved.
They'll stretch it out to the
There's
end.
more optics again.
I agree. They'll stretch it out to the end, and they'll make it a disaster, and there's going to be a couple very big-name Bengal fans out there that says we need to fight and keep doing our bullshit. We have nothing to do with it, first and foremost. Bitching on Twitter, holding up picket signs, that doesn't affect Mike Brown and the county. It really doesn't. It's going to come down to, is the county willing to lose the millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of revenue, and is the NFL willing to move Joe Burrow out of Cincinnati? I don't think they want to move Joe Burrow anywhere. The Bengals are selling tickets. The Bengals are making money. The Bengals contribute to the revenue share. The Bengals secure a market everywhere, all the way up to Indianapolis, up to Cleveland, over to Pittsburgh, and down to Nashville. That's a gaping hole that the NFL would lose. We have to have a legitimate reason to leave a city in the NFL's eyes. And if you look at every single one, with the exception of Art Modell, which is now a state law that you can't do it that way, it's ticket sales is the reason they left. I haven't seen a struggle to sell tickets lately, have you? And quite frankly, as long as Joe Burrow's here, they're not going to.
Surprisingly, I think there's still a waiting list.
Mm-hmm. So, 4 straight winning seasons, Joe Burrow, and no issues with ticket sales. They just put all that money into the renovation of the stadium and the locker rooms. They've just acquired acres upon acres of land along the river bend. They've agreed to build a practice facility, which they're in the process of doing, which is going to cost them beyond millions of dollars. And they already have an indoor practice facility with a bubble. Now you think they're just going to be up and leaving all of that property?
Yeah.
No.
That's Santorin. Like I say, I'm naive with all this, but I said it just doesn't make any sense. Bengal Dad, does this make any sense to you? You're building a practice facility. You just redid your whole locker room. You started the Ring of Honor. If I knew I was leaving, you say if you were Mike, if you were the owner, would you be wasting your time with all of this if you knew you were leaving?
No, I wouldn't.
That's what I said.
They're not going to. It's going to be a headache. They're going to end up staying. It's going to be a pain in the ass. And if you remember, the last time that this was going on, right? What was that, like 92 for the 96 move, right? Who was the team that ended up leaving in our place?
The Browns.
Which, again, you can't do that anymore. That was that entire Art Modell situation.
Yeah.
It was either going to be us or them, and now it's illegal to do it that way. So
why don't we just start our own little rumor and narrative that the Bengals did all this so they could make their team more valuable, and they're going to sell the Bengals, and we're going to have a new owner. Why don't we start that? That'd be a really good thing, wouldn't it?
GoFundMe going. I'll buy them.
Elon Musk, where you at?
Right.
It's an alternate reality where you and I own the Bengals or the Reds, right? That's a thing. We've discussed that before. And here to Kevin's point, because Kevin is a very well-educated person, the Art Modell law saved the Columbus Crew from leaving. They tried to go. It doesn't work. The state of Ohio makes it near impossible for a professional sports franchise to leave where they're currently at. So as much as we love to bitch about Art Modell, he's kind of saving our ass right now. And like I said, if they do decide to leave, you don't think that Warren or Butler County, with all that farmland they have up around Kings Island, wouldn't be begging to have that revenue money? Imagine the tourism money that would come in from Warren County if you put the Bengals up near Kings Island.
I got 5 acres in Batavia, but I don't think that's going to get it done.
Probably not.
You go through Lebanon, you go through Mason, you see just all this land. I'm like, gosh, dang it.
There's just so many places. Like I said, Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Not that Indiana wants a second team. But even if they crossed the border, went into Lawrenceburg, and they went by the, Indiana Bengals or the Cincinnati Bengals, and they're just kind of outside that range, that wouldn't bother me. That's still the Bengals. They're still right there. Moving 10 minutes the other direction does not bother me.
You're talking about like the Niners moving to Santa Clara.
Right. Who gives a shit? They're still the San Francisco 49ers. That's still their team. It would bother me if they went down to like Lexington. But even if they went to like Covington or Erlanger, that's to me, that's still Cincinnati.
What about Columbus? What if it was Columbus? So you and I had this talk.
Columbus would sting a little bit. But, I'm an hour from the stadium anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm 20 minutes from the state. I'm an hour with traffic. It doesn't affect my broadcast. They're still going to be on TV every Sunday. I could still own my season tickets. Like, would it sting knowing that they're Columbus Bengals instead of the Cincinnati Bengals? Sure. But that's not enough of a move that would still dissuade me.
No. Or the Dayton Bengals. But what if it was Dayton? I wouldn't care.
Financially, that would be a disaster for them. But no, like, still, the proximity, even if they went out to like Athens, which again would be a horrible move financially, it would take them really, really, really moving, which again, by law is near impossible.
At the end of the day, I don't think they're going anywhere.
No.
at the end of the day, we're going to sign Jamar. I can't put that at the end of the day for T. Higgins because A, I don't know if they will, and B, I'm still not convinced it makes all the sense in the world to do it.
Right.
He still doesn't play enough games.
So should we move on to Scott Peters?
Yeah, we'll touch on that real quick because we're at the 40-minute mark. I went a little long-winded with my
No,
statement.
it's okay. No. You provided good information here.
Scott Peters.
The only thing I don't want to hear about Scott Peters is how everybody loves him and he's supposed to be one of the best offensive line coaches around. I heard that same shit about Frank Pollock. The same exact shit. And I remember talking to our neighbor, who we're not allowed to mention his name, and his comment to me was, they say that about every offensive line coach. They all say it's the best guy around.
Sure. Here's the resume. He had an awful year with New England last year. I will start with the cons. Okay? New England was dead last in pass protection. They were almost dead last in run game blocking, and they were dead last in overall offensive line ranking.
That's our guy.
They were atrocious. I will start there. However, they were starting Michael Johnson and Ben Brown. Michael Johnson could barely make this team.
Michael Jordan, yeah.
Michael Jordan could barely make this team, and Ben Brown was on our practice squad. He was starting two guys that weren't good enough to make Frank Pollock's offensive line. So I'm going to give him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt when it comes to talent because he did not have any to work with. Not a damn soul on that offensive line with the exception of Onwenu, however you say his name, is a quality offensive lineman.
Yeah.
Moving on to what he's done in the past, he was with the Browns all those years that they had really good offensive lines with Bill Callahan.
Mm-hmm.
He was Bill Callahan's protege. That is where his resume comes from. He founded the Tip of the Spear Academy, which is a training academy for offensive linemen. He is known to be very technique-centric and development-focused, which is the same thing that we're hearing from Al Golden, development. That's where they've struggled, specifically on the defensive and offensive line. So that's kind of a common theme we're hearing. He is a young guy. He has only been an official offensive line coach for 1 year. And this is where I'll get into the stuff Dad doesn't like. But everybody loves him. Everybody loved Frank Pollock too. I understand that. But this guy has coached offensive lines in the AFC North and had a lot of success.
Well, can we talk about the kiss of death?
Yes.
An a former Bengal endorsed him.
Yeah.
I'll say this about Willie. Whoever Willie has endorsed has worked out. The one that hasn't is when TJ Hushmanzada endorses somebody. He's 0 for 2 with Jermaine Burton and John Ross. Willie's been solid.
Joe Goodberry talked about this. The difference between him and Frank Pollock is he knows his technique. I just keep hearing technique. So when they traded for Wyatt Teller, people forget. I'm sure you remember this same story. Wyatt Teller, they got for like peanuts. He didn't do anything in Buffalo. They say they gave him a lot of credit for helping out Teller's technique, and Teller, man, turned out to be one of the best guards in the league, pretty much.
He's known for developing guys. He's known for getting the most out of veterans. He's known for developing veterans continuously and continuing to help them grow. But I will say last year in New England, he had next to nothing, but Michael Jordan's PFF grade, if you like PFF, was the highest of his career when he was in New England. He was a respectable offensive lineman in New England, and he couldn't do a damn thing here. So there's definitely a track record of development with him. And he's never really been given a whole lot of talent. In the times he has been given talent, with Bill Callahan, mind you, things have gone well. There's reason for optimism with him. In terms of guys that were available that would have been okay moving up to the next level, for guys that are, like I said, moving up, not available offensive line coaches, but guys that are available moving up, he was probably one of the better options. Would I be lying if I said I knew who he was before Wednesday or Monday, whatever it was? Absolutely. I remember when he played with the Cardinals. That's about it. I didn't know he was currently a coach. But Greg, you and I, when we were going through the other day on the show, who would we want to be on the team and who would we want to be coaching, we talked about assistants who have had long track records of success. He was no longer an assistant last year, so he wasn't anybody that I looked into qualifying. But if I would have looked at the Browns from, I think it was like 17 to 22 when he was there, whatever it was, all of those numbers still hit those qualifications. So he would have been on that list.
And let's go back to endorsements. Hey, we forget, former offensive line coach McNally spoke very highly of him on Twitter. And McNally, is one of those guys, he mentioned him along with Callahan. I mean,
McNally's what's crazy is because McNally documents everything.
Yeah.
McNally's been talking about him on Twitter for like 5 years now. Like where people are digging up film of him, McNally, and Peters at coaching clinics together, working together. So that's not somebody that McNally's just going, oh, yeah. I've heard his name. This is somebody that McNally's worked with. And, Dad, I know you respect McNally because you always wanted him to be a consultant for us for all those years.
I still wonder why the Bengals don't lean on some of these people.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't Anthony Munoz have an idea?
Well,
couldn't he help somebody?
They're starting to lean toward Willie Anderson because he has his academy. They do lean on McNally because of everything that man has accomplished. And those two guys have pointed to this guy and said, yeah, that's him. I know you don't necessarily like all the endorsements saying that, oh, this guy's going to be great, this guy's going to be great. But when it comes to those two in particular guys, Willie and McNally, I take their weight in gold. Now, if it would have been, and I love the guy, he's a nice guy. If it had been Paul Alexander, who has steered us wrong several times at this point, I would have gone, ugh. But the guys that I respect this guy. So, again, like you said with Golden, it's going to be a wait-and-see thing. Mm-hmm. You're probably not going to see a ton until halfway through this year and into next year. The development is not an overnight, immediate thing. But he's got Mims, who is, if there's someone to develop, it's Mims. He's got Karras, who we know what Karras offers, and we know what Orlando Brown offers. He's going to have to cut his teeth in figuring out this guard situation because we need 2 new guards. And that's where I'm really going to judge him is those other 3, did they maintain or progress? Because that's what I care about. Because Volson and Kappa regressed. Yeah. Do the main 3 guys, right tackle, center, left tackle, maintain or progress? And do we fix guard? If those 2 things happen, that's all I'm asking are 2 things, I will consider him a success.
Where do you realistically want to see them? I mean, obviously you want to see them ranked first, but where do you realistically – what's a good realistic rank in your opinion? I think the Bengals finished 27th overall in offensive line.
If you can get to 20th or higher,
yeah,
it's a vast improvement.
Yeah.
That's a huge improvement. So that's where I would put it. If they can go in there's so many different metrics. But if you can let's just go with PFF grade because that's the one everybody uses. Mm-hmm. If their Pro Football Focus grade for an offensive line, I'll even just stick with pass blocking. If they're pass blocking, because that's going to be the thing that makes this shit go, let's be honest, can be 20th or better next year, considering I need 2 new guards and they were bad this year, I will deem it a success.
And to get those 2 guards, I think do you draft one and sign one?
You're going to have to do 1 and 1. You're not going to have the money to do both, and you're not going to have the picks to do both. You only got 6 picks this year.
Right.
So you're going to have to be a little strategic. It's going to be 1 and 1.
Do you still stand by what you said? Because you and I talked about this last year going off to Buc-ee's. I said corner. It's probably not going to be corner, probably.
Going to Buc-ee's.
but like on the drive over. But you still say guard. Guard's still a possibility. I personally think it's going to be trenches because it's a loaded trenches class. But guard, I would not argue with still. Do you still see it being guard at first round?
It depends how the board falls because there's not too many guards for the first round.
Right.
There's going to be a ton of defensive linemen in the first round.
And that's good.
It probably is going to end up being either the kid from Michigan, Kenneth Grant, or a pass rusher.
Hey.
If the board falls weird, it might be Tyler Booker from Alabama, and that's it. Those would be, it's either going to be Kenneth Grant, Tyler Booker, or one of 3 pass rushers. It could end up being the Pierce kid. It could end up being the kid from Marshall, Mike Great.
Yes.
Who he looks really, really good on tape. And there'd be a small part of me that would really get a kick out of a dominant Marshall player because you don't get too many of them. But that's probably where it's going to end up being, is one of those 3 guys.
And you and I can agree. We'll be perfectly fine with that, right?
I'm fine with just getting good players.
Yes, that too.
Just get good ball players. Does position of need matter? 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But I would rather take a really good ball player at a position I don't necessarily need as opposed to reaching for an average ball player at something I do need. Capitalize on the investment. These are lottery tickets. Swing big where you can.
Well, I'll give you an example. Say Xavier Watts. This is getting out golden. He values him a lot. Say if he keeps flying up the draft boards.
I wouldn't hate Xavier Watts either. I really like him.
I like him too. So like you said, if the safety's really down, if you know you can get a Derwin James type of guy, you can't turn that down.
Dad, we have a question for you. I'm trying to figure out what Bengal Dad has on TV through the window reflection.
American Crimes. It's just on there. I'm not watching it.
We can see it.
We can see the window, yeah.
See it. All right. So overall, I give both the Scott Peters. I give Scott Peters probably a B to a B plus higher. There's always going to be a better name you could have gotten, but only time will tell. We could look back at this in 15 years and say, holy shit, did we kill that one? Or we could look back at this in a year and go, holy fuck, was that bad? And that's going to be the same with every coaching hire ever. I think Jake Lisco said it, and I 100% agree with it. 99% of the time, we just don't know.
Yes.
But if I'm going off of resumes, they make sense. And that's all I can ever ask is that can I, as a fan, justify the hire? And for both of these, I can.
Agree.
Bengal Dad?
I just hope when I'm watching Bengal football next year, I can say, yeah, that offensive line looks a whole lot better. And boy, that defense looks a lot better. I don't need PFF scores. I don't need any other stuff. I just want to go, hey, I don't feel like we're going to give up a touchdown in the final 13. Well, I won't say that one. Final 14 seconds or 15 seconds. Oh, I want to feel like we've got a defense that you can go, okay, we have a 99% chance of winning this game because hardly anybody scores against us in these situations.
And Bengal, I tell you what you're saying. It's like, look, I'll believe it when I see it. I don't care about the rest. I totally get where you're coming from on that. And I feel the same way too. But I mean, I'm still excited, but I totally get what you're saying on that.
A results-driven man.
And I want to see Burrow throw for 4 touchdowns and 400 yards and a win in the opener.
Me too.
Yeah, they need to they can't start slow.
No, they need to step on somebody's throat right away.
Do you remember the Raider game where they were still throwing with like 5 minutes? They were up by like 25.
Oh, yeah.
They were still throwing with like 2 and 3 minutes to go. I just remember the like 60-yard play to Gesicki down the seam. And I think you and I had the conversation, Dad, of I think they meant to do that. I think that was an FU to everybody that said that they weren't good enough to play ball. And they just made a statement. Can they just make a statement in week 1?
Right.
Do that, yes.
Can we make a statement against a good team?
Right. I don't know who we're going to play in week 1, but can they just look competent? If the defense can look competent, you block for Joe. Now, granted, we got to throw some blame to Joe. I know the lines haven't been great, but Joe's played like shit in the first couple of weeks every single year.
Yes, he has.
Well, this will be the first
that's
normal
kind of
offseason
been
Joe's
done.
ever had with the Bengals, right? I think this will be the first ever normal offseason he's going to have.
We'll see.
Okay.
I mean, the first year was COVID, and his first game ever against the Chargers. I'm trying not to hold his first game ever against him. Didn't throw for many yards. He had a couple big scrambles. I always remember the run against the Chargers for his first touchdown.
Yeah. Then, well, AJ Green pushed off, which he clearly did.
And the next week against the Browns, I think he threw for like 360 yards. I know they lost, but his rookie year, he looked pretty smooth coming out the gate. And then the next year he had to worry about his ACL. And then the next year he had to worry about the appendix. And then the next year he had the calf. And then this year he's had the wrist.
Are rookie quarterbacks just getting a lot better? Look at the year Stroud had last year, and look at Jaden Daniels this year. Bo Nix did pretty well too this year.
He did, and I did not like Bo Nix at all. I'm looking way, way wrong on that one.
Yeah, it's like these rookie quarterbacks are far more advanced than they were
Tori,
I'll say this. Sorry, Greg. Go ahead.
No. You and I were talking about this because I asked you about Bo Nix, but you told me with the Cubs, who's the Broncos coach? What's his name? Peyton. Peyton he was good at he was only good at like a few certain things, and like you told me, Peyton, with him being a good coach, learned how to develop quarterbacks. Well, besides Russell Wilson,
a lot of it is
used it to his advantage. Yeah,
a lot of where you are as a rookie quarterback is who you get paired up with.
Yeah,
if Trevor Lawrence would have been in a better situation, his career might have a completely different outlook right now. But when you look at Jaden Daniels, you look at Joe Burrow, and you look at Bo Nix, and I'm trying to think of one more that might fit what I'm about to say, but I'll leave it at those three. What do all three of those guys have in common coming out of college?
good OC or good.
They were older.
Oh,
They were all around 24-ish years old when they got drafted, which normally when you're scouting somebody is the kiss of
That
death.
didn't help Brandon Whedon.
no,
A lot older.
or Chris Wanky.
Right. So, these quarterbacks that are able to start for 5 years, that have so many reps under their belt, all
Well, you can't put Burrow into that category.
Well, he was around for 5 years. He was
Yeah, but
older.
he didn't play the first 3 years.
No, but
He didn't have any reps under his
he wouldn't
wing.
play the last two. He was
Played
older.
two.
That's a lot of mental reps too. Like a guy like Burrow is still taking his mental reps. When you got guys that are in college programs for 5 and 6 years, multiple different schools, multiple different systems, they've seen so much, so many blitz packages against them, multiple different systems, how to check in and out of different things, different screens, different offenses, different run games, different pass protections. By the time they get to the NFL, it's not like this is a kid that sat there for 2 years or 1 year and had a one-hit wonder year as a sophomore, and he's coming out at 20 years old, and you worry what's going on with him, or he only had 15, 20 games under his belt. These are guys that have half a decade of experience in multiple different systems. It's incredibly valuable. Incredibly valuable. And Jade Daniels was multiple different schools. Bo Nix, multiple different schools. Burrow, multiple different schools. And they all came out right around the age of 24. There might be something to be said for that. So we'll see moving forward, but experience is the biggest gift. And you can't train it. It just happens over time. And to Taylor Bowles' point, Uncle Rico's been throwing football since his 40s.
Well, we're moving right. We're up on an hour at this point.
Yeah, it's time for us to bounce off of here.
Yeah.
We're gonna be at work at 9 in the morning. And Greg, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Dad, how's the
I
work?
think we need to have a pre-championship show sometime around 2:00 on Sunday.
Yeah, we can do that instead of our Friday show.
Because I do think this Sunday coming up is the best Sunday of the NFL. I've heard people talk about wild card weekend and divisional round. when you got everybody knowing they are one game away from the Super Bowl, I don't know how you get any higher quality of play.
Right. I agree. It's always been a good week. Always, every year. Any barn updates before we jump off here?
Ooh.
It's not going to be done until probably the tail end of February, just because of a slowdown with the flooring.
Mhm.
But it's really close at this point.
All right.
That's all I can really tell you.
That and we're going on
I wanted to
vacation.
have it done by the Super Bowl, but it's not going to be done.
Well, that and we're going on a family.
Yeah, I mean, a week before the Super Bowl, I'll be gone anyway, so there'll be nothing going on in there.
Well, you were gone last week. We're gone in 2 weeks. Then you got a week of flooring. So
That's
it's-
gonna be-
Yeah, nothing's going to go fast right now.
All right.
But I expect a really, really big Bengal party for the opener next year, if they open on the road.
Greg, start rounding the troops.
I'll start rounding up everything, bud.
Ashley,
Hi, Ashley.
we're live. How are you? She says she's going to bed. That's my call.
Hey, Bengal Dad, let me ask you just a random quick question before we head off here. Have you ever heard of the term chicken chunks
Oh my God.
Chicken chunks?
instead of boneless wings? So
No.
apparently they can be called chicken chunks.
Nope, never heard of it.
We got in a group chat fight over that.
Yeah.
Oh, I had one last question. This is a yes or no. Give your logic in and out, and we'll end it. I've asked you this before, Dad, but Greg, I want your opinion first.
Let's hear it.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No, I saw that. No, I don't. I could see where some, but no, I do not consider it a sandwich.
Dad, is a hot dog a sandwich?
No,
Why not?
it's just not a sandwich. I don't know why. I mean, a hot dog bun is not a sandwich bun.
Yeah, because it's folded up like this. A sandwich is more. But then again, some people eat a hot dog. You know.
Yeah, some people eat hot dogs on those, but no, in my book, that's not a sandwich.
So if I slit the bottom of the bun and it was 2 separate pieces, would it be a sandwich?
To me, it's closer to a sub.
Is a sub not a sandwich?
So I don't think a sub's a sandwich.
A sub is a no, Bagel Dad. I do consider a sub a sandwich here.
I don't think
Since
so.
we're in this process, what's the difference between a hoagie and a sub? I never understood that.
It's the same thing. That's regional dialect.
Okay.
Seems like the difference. I could be way wrong here. Seems to be the difference between a hoagie and a sub is the bun is connected, much like a hot dog bun. With a hoagie, it's 2 separate pieces of bread.
We will continue this next week with hoagie versus sub.
Yes, we will.
Thank you to everybody for watching. Good night, and as always,